in my view, a user is not going to pick a chain because it's ETH aligned, it's Cosmos aligned, or it's Bitcoin aligned. They're going to pick a chain that they like. They're going to pick a chain that's all purpose and multiple, right? So regardless of whether you're building a Bitcoin related chain, whether you're building a Cosmos or an EVM chain, it's about building a chain with great facilities, with great user experience, right? At the end of the day, that's what I feel a typical user would want to.
Blockmates Orange is sponsored by Core Network, the ultimate Bitcoin-powered EVM-compatible blockchain. Learn more about Core at blockmates.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Blockmates Orange. Special guest today is Jing from Solv BTC. Liquid stake derivatives, Bitcoin. Solv are pretty much knee deep in this. Been around for a while. Jing, welcome. It's good to have you. Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Welcome.
Thanks a lot for having us, and great to be here.
Yeah. Congratulations, firstly, on a big raise that you guys recently did. I think it was announced yesterday for 25 million. It seems like there's a lot of interest around Bitcoin, and obviously Bitcoin in the context of DeFi. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do at Solv, and then also what you guys are effectively doing at Solv Protocol.
Sure. So most of my background, I guess, prior to Solv and prior to blockchain has really been in traditional finance. I was on the trading floor for many years doing exotic products, structured products, before getting into crypto. I think the crypto rabbit hole took me and the team down to building Solv, and it's been, I would say, a very interesting and a very, very challenging journey. I think the race we had yesterday was really a combination of many years of hard work from the entire team. So definitely very grateful and very appreciative to everyone that actually contributed in the process. So specifically for Solv, I think for many of those that are familiar with Bitcoin, they would probably know who we are. If not, I'll give a quick introduction. So at Solv, what we're looking to do are two things, right? We are looking to build a staking abstraction concept and a staking abstraction layer. And what really that means is that we want to be the hub. We want to be the gateway. We want to be the one-stop shop where users want to deploy their assets. They want to deploy their BTCs. We are the people that they come to. They get an entire range of offerings and an entire range of assets, all the way from your vanilla staking, whether is it on places like on Core or on Babylon, all the way to using your Bitcoin for more exotic purposes, like for trading purposes across your arbitrage offerings, your pub dexes like GMX and Jupiter. So that's really the whole range of what we're looking to build. I think over the last few months, the market has been very supportive of what we are building. Right now, we have about 22 or 23,000 Bitcoins, so roughly about 1.3 or 1.4 billion on the platform. And definitely from here, we really feel like this is just a start, and how we can actually grow to actually create probably a better product market fit for our users.
So when you talk about the platform, is Solv a separate ecosystem on its own that essentially connects to something like the core network? Just from a technical level, can you just explain to us how Solv currently exists as an entity?
So you can think about Solv as a platform, as a layer where we offer users different types of yield opportunities or different types of revenue opportunities. One example I'll give you is Core. Right? We launched our LST with Core roughly about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So what users can do is they can deposit their Bitcoin through us, and that gets staked to the Core network and it's used to secure the chain. On the top of the chain, we'll issue them an LST, which we call Solv BTC.Core. This allows them to get involved in the DeFi ecosystem across the lending, the DEXs, perpetuals, and the launchpads and everything. So that is one avenue of returns, and that's staking. Another one that's probably quite common recently is our Babylon LSTs. For Babylon, many people who are not familiar with, you can probably think about it as like your symbiotic or your eigenlayer equivalent on the BTC side. So similarly, users can deposit their BTC via us into the Babylon protocol, and then we would issue them an LST. In this case, it's Solv BTC.Babylon. So really, that's how, as an ecosystem, we exist. We want users to be able to have options across protocols, across strategies, across points, across real use.
In terms of kind of like the starting point of this thing, right? We've obviously had, the birth of Ethereum, the understanding that, we can take assets and derive yield from them, smart contracts, all of that kind of stuff. What is the relationship around something that Ethereum has done in the past and continues to do now? And obviously the desire for you guys to now tap into what I understand to be a very similar kind of model. Are they the same kind of thing? Are you trying to emulate what Ethereum did in the past and take it forward with Bitcoin? What is that dynamic exactly that is currently at play at the moment?
So I think it's a good question, and it's a good point that you made. To a certain extent, we almost see something like a Lido as giving us a lot of ideas and inspiration on how we actually want to take this forward. Ethereum has done a lot for blockchain, for crypto, and this ecosystem we are in. Ethereum and DeFi are pretty much, they coexist, right? Like a lot of Ethereum users are very, very DeFi native. But then the difference is that for Bitcoin holders and BTC holders, if you think about it, where do you actually hold your Bitcoin? You're not going to hold it on Ethereum mainnet in WBTC, right? You're going to hold it in your co-wallets, in your ledgers, in your centralized exchanges. So the user profile, the user journey, and how they actually get comfortable with this ecosystem that we call DeFi is very, very different. And I can give you a few examples where we are doing many of the early Twitter spaces in Q3, Q4 last year. Many of the users that came through these channels, they were not familiar with what's a Uniswap EM DEX. They were not familiar with what's a GM Expert DEX. It's about really getting them comfortable, really educating them, and really getting up to speed, right? But then they're very, very familiar with BRC20s, with runes, with ordinals, right? So that's the ecosystem that it came to. That's like BTC DeFi in its very, very nascent stages.
I think this is a little bit of an interesting one, because we understand, the value that Bitcoin has. It's the most valuable crypto asset that we have. It's considered to be essentially the equivalent of a savings account, a store of value. But now what we're trying to do, and what you guys are doing, I mean, it's a hands-on thing where you obviously wanting to almost expand the value of Bitcoin into, yield opportunities and collateralization and the rest of it. How do you get people, like, from an educational, from an understanding point of view, how do you actually persuade people to actually say, okay, cool, I'm comfortable with this whole process. I'm comfortable with stepping outside of this comfort zone that is a savings account, that is, a store of value, and actually putting it to good use from a yield optimization perspective. Is it business as usual, or do you guys have to kind of like approach it from a different way?
So I don't have a single answer to that, but what I can tell you is this. We have encountered an entire range of users in this space. You have traditional Bitcoin maxis that will always keep their Bitcoin in their wallets and never touch it and do anything. And there's no issue with that. And then you have those that are already very, very DeFi native. But the majority are somewhere in the middle, right? The middle, 80%, 90%. And it's about, how do you get them comfortable with the entire process? How do you get them to trust you as a protocol? How do you get them to trust you as wrappers and stuff? In my view, Bitcoin in DeFi right now is a bunch of trust assumptions, because Bitcoin lacks that programmability at this point of time. It's a bunch of trust assumptions, all the way from which custodians do you use? Do you trust those custodians? The contracts do you use? The wrappers you use? It's a bunch of trust assumptions over there, and step by step about getting people comfortable beyond your core wallets, beyond your ledgers, and beyond your custodians. And really, that's what I would say. It hasn't been an easy journey, I would say, but it's been a journey that's been very rewarding, because we see users, whether it's retail or more institutional, actually getting more and more accepting.
Yeah, I find that to be the most interesting part about it because, obviously having hosted this show and the Blockmates Orange, I've spoken to a number of Bitcoin maxis, and kind of like this whole idea around, liquid staking derivatives and even staking for that matter, like standard staking is kind of like deemed to be a really bad thing to do because you're handing over your custody and it's kind of like it's leaving my wallet and it's going somewhere else. Is there a way that that whole issue can be addressed? I know obviously with the core network, and we'll chat about that in a little bit, but obviously on the core network, they have this locking mechanism, which obviously allows you to still retain access to your Bitcoin. Is that a mechanism that you guys are currently tapping into and using, or are you essentially asking people to trust you and to hand over their Bitcoin to you?
So it's a combination. So what I think the core network and the core chain has built is something very very novel and very unique. Conceptually, it's holding your Bitcoin in your wallets, but signing up for a staking concept via a time lock, where you agree to have your assets there via a time lock for a certain period of time. And I won't go into the technical details, but for it's a good step and it's a baby step because a lot of times the assets can actually sit within their existing custodies or their existing wallets, right? So it's not about having you to completely remove it at this point of time. It's about still safe, but then agreeing to a bunch of, I would say, rules that dictate how the staking is going to be played. So I think what Core has been doing and what many of the other protocols are doing is that it's taking baby steps to get many Bitcoin users who traditionally have never really used their Bitcoin in this capacity and getting them more and more gradually into the broader ecosystem. At the end of the day, in my view, a user is not going to pick a chain because it's ETH aligned, it's Cosmos aligned, or it's Bitcoin aligned. They're going to pick a chain that they like. They're going to pick a chain that's all purpose and multi-purpose, right? So regardless of whether you're building a Bitcoin related chain, whether you're building a Cosmos or an EVM chain, it's about building a chain with great facilities, with great user experience, right? At the end of the day, that's what I feel a typical user would want to pick.
Yeah, okay. That's super interesting. And I mean, obviously, it comes down to the value that you create and the incentives that you guys, I would assume, are in place on this journey that you're currently on. Just in terms of kind of like the roadmap that you guys have traveled, you've obviously built this thing over the last few years, and you are able to facilitate Bitcoin staking. You've had some interesting, like, kind of like inventions in inverted commas. I mean, you spoke about staking, the staking abstraction layer. But before we get into that, just kind of like tell us about this journey that you guys have been on, like from its formative stages, and then obviously now going to market on a wider scale. Just kind of like tell us a little bit about that journey. Would love to hear about it.
Sure. So I think as recent as last year, we were running a lot of, I would say, kind of like asset management offerings on chain, right? We were running arbitrage offerings, delta neutral offerings on pub dexes and CeFi and a whole range of stuff. But then what we started to notice is that increasingly users don't want to deposit into a vault. So that's really the first thing. They want to generate yield, they want to make money, but they want it to be in a form of a token that they can do more than just depositing in a vault at the end of story, right? So then the concept, and it's probably not new, but it's a concept of token that's yield bearing, right? And then that's really how the whole thing, I think, really kicked off. When you have a token, it's yield bearing, you can take it around into the ecosystems as lending, as collateral, then that gets really exciting for users. So that's number one. And then number two, we started to realize that many users have different risk tolerance or different risk preferences. Some of them would find certain trading strategies too much for them, right? And that's why we decided to break it up. And so that's really how I think we evolved over the last 1 year or so, and how we actually came down this journey over the last 12 months.
So what's kind of like, the long-term view for you guys? Is it about integrating into as many ecosystems as possible? Is it about setting up your own ecosystem and then bringing devs in. What does that roadmap look like for you from an ideal perspective?
So I think where we are right now is, if you look at Bitcoin on chain, there's still a lot of fragmentation, right? There is your WBTC, there's your Coinbase BTC. On your BNB chain, there's your Binance BTC, and even on native Bitcoin, there's Bitcoin chain on Bitcoin, right? Sorry, there's Bitcoin on Bitcoin chain. So it's about how you want to actually bring all these things together. But then what you notice is that increasingly, a lot of BTCs and a lot of these assets doesn't really sit in your crypto crowd anymore. It starts to sit within your traditional assets, in your ETFs, in your institutional funds. How do you get those users excited and actually get them into this ecosystem that we are in? And I think that's really the next stage. Like with how Bitcoin is going right now, I think we are at a very, very interesting point where we have a very good opportunity to get increasingly more and more of these users, whether is it retail or whether is it institutions, engaged. And I think that's really the goal for this ecosystem that we are in, whether we call it crypto or whether we call it blockchain, right? We want adoption, we want increasing users, and I think that's the direction that we want to try to go into.
I'm of the belief that users will come if they are incentivized, regardless of what the barriers to entry are. I mean, we've seen it in the DeFi context. You seem like the kind of person who's been around the block. It's almost like there's kind of like a premium price tag to things if it's hard to do. If it's hard to buy something and you've got to essentially walk through the gauntlet. And right now, I believe that we are in a stage where we might be kind of like stepping over the line. Stepping over the line being that we obviously starting to cater for more kind of like normie users and more users that actually are demanding a better experience from an onboarding perspective, whether it's staking your Bitcoin, whether it's buying, it doesn't matter. Point is that people don't want to have to run through the gauntlet. Is this something that you guys have thought about in terms of the way that you've created your product? I mean, obviously the staking abstraction layer and what you guys have built there is novel in itself, and it's quite interesting and really good. But is it about considering the client or the customer experience, or is it about, well, here it is, take it or leave it at this point in time, and then kind of improve on it later on?
So I think firstly, those are very, very good points that you brought up, and it's pretty much stuff that we think about on a daily basis. So firstly, we feel like we wanted to create a product, essentially a gateway where users can access returns and users can access yield. Why? Because that's the reason why they're here, right? Those returns and those yield opportunities need to exist, right? When we have that, then it's about how do we refine that process about getting them in all the way to finally it becomes a one-click solution, right? I think it's something we are slowly trying to get there. I would be lying if I say we are there today, and I'll be lying if I say anyone is there today. But really, that's the goal, right? You create the products, you create, maybe not the product, you create something that potentially has a product market fit. And how do you ease users in? How do you get them in a more efficient way? I think that's something that we, and not just us, but like the entire ecosystem needs to spend a lot of time focusing on building and engaging.
Coming back to the client experience. So if I'm a user who is currently present in the core ecosystem, just walk us through kind of like, where do I go in terms of accessing what it is that you guys do, and what does that experience look like practically from your perspective?
So if it's a user sitting in the core ecosystem and the core chain, they would be able to go to our portal and our protocol, solv.finance, to purchase or to get involved in the core LS, into the solvbtc.core LSTs. Users can either use our own native Solv BTC, or they can use the core BTC. And then from there, that's where the ball starts rolling. We try to adapt to various chains and various ecosystems, because one thing we realize is that there are many different versions of wrapped BTCs on each chain. We do try to maintain as rigorous a standard as possible when we do our due diligence. But at the same time, we also want to be as, what's the word for that?
Versatile.
Yeah, versatile, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about kind of like Wrap BTC and what your thoughts were around that, because obviously we've seen WBTC being a little bit of a contentious issue at the moment. I mean, do you have an opinion around that in terms of, you know, wrapping BTC per se? Is it something that you guys are comfortable with, or would you like to see kind of like an evolution away from wrapped assets?
Uh, I think it's a good point. So in the market right now, I think there are two extremes in solutions, maybe three. The first solution is just use native Bitcoin, right? But native Bitcoin, because of its lack of programmability, at least for now, there are limits on what you can do. Then if you talked about the wrap variations, there tends to be two kinds. Centralized wrappers like Coinbase BTC, like Binance BTC, and like Wrap BTC. And then there's your decentralized offerings like your Threshold BTC by the Thesis team or the DLC BTC. So in my view, and this is what I've noticed, is that both product sets, I wouldn't say which is better than the other, but they definitely cater to different crowds. There are definitely many users that we have spoken to that definitely trust a decentralized solution only. And there are many BTC holders that only trust a custody solution, right? So are we at a point where we are going via a single solution? I don't think we are there yet. And if anything, in the long term, I would think that many of this would actually coexist.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is about coexistence. Would there be an environment where we don't have even wrapped everything? I don't think it's possible. Not in the current infrastructure, but it'll be interesting to see how, especially what you guys are doing, how kind of like collateralizing Bitcoin, and then from that point onwards, what that looks like, within kind of like an EVM framework, or even within the Bitcoin framework. In terms of differences between ecosystems and obviously the bridges that exist between them, you guys talk about being interoperable. Is that correct? So are you guys utilizing chains, whether they're side chains or L2s, depending on what the debate around those looks like? Are you guys then communicating via bridges to those different ecosystems from your point as a protocol? How does that work?
Yes, so we believe for many of these chains, the one thing that we're trying to solve is fragmentation, right? So and part of our roadmap over the next few weeks and the next few months is really about expanding to new ecosystems and new chains. So very often, once off BTC on one chain, you can also probably bridge it over to another chain as well. We use most of your common bridging solutions right now, whether it's Chainlink, CCIP, or some of its competitor offerings out there. So really the goal is to take advantage of what DeFi has been building over the last 4 to 5 years, but then really put a BTC spin to it. At the end of the day, I feel like BTC, at least our wrap version, it's just another ERC20. And how about you? It's about how you bring it onto different ecosystems and actually get it plugged in.
In terms of apps that are obviously connecting to, whatever chain that it might be, is there an opportunity where we could have something like perps dexes in the context of Bitcoin, for example, in your opinion? Or is it something that is too slow? Is it something that can be facilitated or compensated through kind of like L1 to side chain? Or do you think it's kind of limited in its ability to do that?
If you talk about directly on the Bitcoin chain, there are definitely many teams out there that are building very, very cool products and ideas, whether is it L2, side chains, meta protocols. And it'll be interesting to see in a year or two from now, which of these will actually be truly scalable. Scalable in terms of the ability to handle the transactions, the volume, and the speed, right? But I think as of right now, it's probably challenging for many of these offerings to exist on the BTC L1. That being said, there are many changes, right? With example, OPCAT coming along. It's something we're all looking forward to. We can't say for sure what's the timing and stuff for all this to go live, but it's definitely going to help.
What do you see the benefit from like something like OPCAT? I mean, why is it potentially such a big deal?
essentially, maybe it's not accurate to say this, but it adds a layer of programmability to Bitcoin. Not completely that, but that's a way I would say it's simple to understand. And then when you add that really powerful tool, right, then you pretty much create a lot of opportunities on what users can actually do on Bitcoin chain, right? Right now, we are pretty much handcuffed by and limited by what we can do. But OPCAT pretty much opens a little bit of a Pandora's box.
So is OPCAT something that's going to happen, or is it something that a decision is being made around at the moment?
Well, it's in progress. Decisions are being made. Hopefully something we can look forward to probably sometime next year.
Okay, great. Just closing out our discussion today. I mean, I think the biggest challenge is obviously people realizing, just kind of like on a bigger scale, what's happening in the context of Bitcoin DeFi. From my perspective, it seems like people are almost like either not aware, maybe resistant, maybe a combination of the two. But I think there's quite a long way to go before people actually start realizing that, there is like a Solv protocol that's doing, liquid stake derivatives in the Bitcoin space, that there is this opportunity to lend and borrow the same way that you do in DeFi with Bitcoin. What do you think needs to happen? Like, what things do you think need to fall into place before we really see way more of an adoption in the context of what we saw with Ethereum and EVM?
That's a good question, actually. I think there are probably a few angles, right? So Bitcoin users in general, I would feel we have gotten a lot of them excited. We have gotten a lot of them on chain, but I still think there's a huge portion and huge chunk that still stick to their ledgers and still stick to centralized exchanges, right? That's really number one. And then number two, because of the experience and the type of users that are coming in via this, the end goal is that whichever chain that they pick won't exactly be the same chain or the same experience that the Ethereum users pick, right? It's probably going to be a bit of a hybrid from what it is right now. And a lot of that, it has to change because they need to handle BTC assets or BTC users. So it's going to be a combination of time and education, and most importantly, comfort, getting people comfortable. If you think about 2, 3, 4 years ago, when we are going through DeFi summer and you are farming random food coins, right? Who would have thought that now you'll be so comfortable with your MetaMask and stuff, right? So it's really just a time thing. If you think about it, at that time, you're probably on Uniswap or on SushiSwap and just trying to figure out what exactly is happening.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the education space, like it's an interesting one because we are in a unique position where we land up being introduced to protocols and ecosystems that, like yourselves, that are doing stuff that are in many ways kind of like off the main, the main drag, so to say. And then you kind of like see the value. I mean, what you guys are doing is incredible. And then you try and communicate that with even a DeFi centric and a very DeFi intelligent community. And they almost like ignore it. It's kind of like, well, it's not in my field of vision, so I'm going to conveniently ignore it. And then 6 months later, they realize that they've been staring at it this whole time. But what we found is that it is actually about repetition. It is about, firstly, having the conviction that this technology is, something that is worthwhile. And secondly, that it does actually add value to the whole space. And more importantly, it can add value to your life, where you can stake your Bitcoin, earn yield, or you can use your Bitcoin as collateral and then go out into the real world and do stuff with it, as opposed to just being, and I say that in inverted commas, just being, a savings account or the store of value. And for me, it's just repetition. It's just keep on banging that drum, and don't ever stop, because that's the only way that I think this happens. And then, it's like you said earlier on, get people to trust you. How do you do that? You just deliver, you just keep banging it out, you keep delivering. And then before you know it, people are actually like sitting on your doorstep and are demanding your product, and you're struggling to keep up, which is obviously a nice problem to have. So here's looking to you guys with that problem in mind. So just in terms of like the future now, what are your kind of like your short-term goals? I mean, you guys have raised a whole lot of money. You've spoken about obviously scaling the business and going into other ecosystems. Is there anything from an alpha perspective that you can share with us, from users that are looking to you guys now, obviously from this podcast? And how can they get involved? Where does the value lie for them coming into Solv?
So I think you raised a few good points. Maybe even before going to answering the question, where we sit and where I sit, and maybe it's a little bit naive to say this, but like we are all part of this ecosystem that we call DeFi and crypto. At the end of the day, we all need to do a little bit to contribute to ensure that this space will continue to exist, continue to grow, right? It's not just about an inward-looking ecosystem. It's about an outward-looking on how you bring users adoption. And I keep saying this, but like if at the end of the cycle, it stays at this point, I think it's going to be pretty sad. Like we all probably need to put in the effort to actually help this grow. If not, I would say, and from many people's standpoint, especially outside this crypto space, is that what's the point, right? So that's really step number one. And then for number two, I think for a user journey going into Solv, it's really starting with our website, solv.finance. We, whether it's listening to the Blockmates podcast or our weekly fireside chat, I think it's places where we definitely share a lot of our new offerings and share a lot of our insights and our expansion plans. So we have quite a number of new products that are launching over the next few weeks. We're going to have, for users on call, we're going to have a second tranche open. The timing's undecided, but it's probably in the next 1 or 2 weeks. So keep a lookout on our Twitter, and we'll probably mention it very quickly. We had very good reception for the first call LST. We had 500 Bitcoins filled up within the span of about 2 hours. So we're probably going to do a similar one in the next 1 or 2 weeks because we have had a lot of very good reception. So it's something we want to continue to grow and we want to continue scaling. We're very, very excited and happy with how the core ecosystem has been growing. They have been extremely supportive of what we are building, and we definitely want to repay that in multiple ways as well.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a laden platter that you have there, sir. So yeah, all the best. Really looking forward to obviously seeing you guys grow what is already like a big amount at 1.2 billion, but it seems like the sky's the limit. I mean, we're sitting with a $1.3 trillion asset, and I mean, I know that you guys are chasing a chunk of that, and I think if you keep delivering and if you keep doing what I hear you guys are doing, and I've heard a lot of good things, I think you guys are going to do really well. And yeah, good luck. Really kind of you to come on. I know it's late on your side of the world. Lots happening, and yeah, I look forward to watching your growth and maybe getting you back on the show at some point. And yeah, take it easy, and thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having us today. Have a good day.
Pleasure. Thanks everyone for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on for next time. See ya.